Call, please.
Commissioner Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Baxter,
Here.
Commissioner Bernard,
Here.
Vice Mayor Marino,
Here.
Mayor Sachs, Commissioner Weiss,
Here.
Commissioner Woodward.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And because it is Commissioner Weiss's birthday today, he gets to do the invocation and the pledge.
Please stand if you're able. Lord, we ask you to bless this meeting of people who earnestly desire to do their work in the best possible way, to benefit those we serve, and to leave our children a better world. Please give us the wisdom and vision to plan adequately and act correctly to achieve these ends. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions to the agenda?
Good morning, Vice Mayor. Yes. On page 12, 3C4, on page, that is a revised summary reflecting to the dollar how much we're receiving. On page 13, 3C5, again, a dollar change. Page 15, 3E1, we're changing the type of grant that we're receiving, correcting it. On page 36, we are clarifying language and transposed numbers. Page 41, 3K4, we're clarifying language in the revised summary. On page 46, we are revising the summary along with page 47 revised summary. That concludes the add and delete sheet.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
All in favor? Thank you. Consent agenda. Is there anyone that would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? No? Okay. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. We are at special presentations. Commissioner Bernard, you're at 1. It's a brief day with presentations today.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the following individuals please come forward? Dorothy Hazard, Jeremy Johnson, Debbie Rain, Dr. Alicia Wynn, Carmela Marcelin Chapman, Reggie Durandis, Patrick Livingston, Barbara Cheeves, James Green, this proclamation declaring February 2024 as Black History Month. Whereas in 1926, historian Dr. Carter G. Woodson noticed a historical lack of recognition for achievements of African Americans and launched a one-week celebration to help increase appreciation of their contributions. He chose the second week of February to coincide with the birthdays of 2 prominent figures in the African American struggle for freedom, President Abraham Lincoln and author orator Frederick Douglass. And whereas in the fervor of the civil rights movements of the 1960s, colleges and universities began to declare February as Black History Month, and in 1976, President Gerald Ford declared February as Black History Month. In 1986, the U.S. Congress passed a joint resolution designating February as National Black History Month to highlight the contributions African Americans have made to our country and the world. And whereas in 2006, the U.S. Congress passed a concurrent resolution that expanded the observance of Black History Month to include recognition of the achievement and contributions of Afro-descendants of the transatlantic slave trade in all of the Americas, with an emphasis on Latin America and the Caribbean. And whereas in the nearly 50 years since President Ford's declaration, Black History Month has grown to become observed nationally and internationally, with many programs organized on college and university campuses, and has become part of the public school curriculum. And whereas the success of Black History Month has significantly contributed to the nation's progress of race relations, we have seen the emergence of Black elected officials both locally and nationally. In 1990, Maud Ford Lee became Palm Beach County's first Black county commissioner, and in 2008, U.S. voters elected the country's first Black president, Barack H. Obama. In 2015, Virginia C. Baker became the Palm Beach County's first Black county administrator. And whereas the Palm Beach County Community Services Department will host a Black History Culture Tour highlighting iconic and historic places in the county to promote community involvement and cultivate culture awareness. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Palm Beach County, Florida, assembled in regular session the 6th day of February 2024, that February 2024 in Palm Beach County is hereby proclaimed Black History Month. Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. When James Green came to me 3 years ago and asked if I would put this tour together, I was honored. The tour starts at the Community Services Building. We go south to the Spady Museum and tour that. We come up to Lake Worth and tour the Unity Wall, which was built to be a wall of separation, which has turned into a lovely Unity Wall. We go to the Urban League. We go to the Roosevelt Full Service Center. We go to the Storm of 28 Memorial, Tabernacle Baptist Church, the Palm Beach County Historical Society, and we end at the MLK Memorial. Standing with me today are representatives of the places that we visit. We've taken multiple bus loads. We started doing it just in February. We've expanded it to February, and then we do it again for Juneteenth. So it's been an honor to take this tour, and I'm so proud to have been able to lead it. So thank you so much. Thank you, James.
I'd like to invite Sharon LaRue, President and CEO of 211, to come join me at the podium. Is that how you say your last name? LaRue. Sharon LaRue. Thank you. It's an honor to present this proclamation honoring 211. It's the only free 24/7, 365 crisis hotline serving Palm Beach, Martin and St. Lucie, Indian River, and Okeechobee counties. The highly trained staff handle approximately 120,000 requests for help annually. This translates to the 211 team responding to an average of 12 life-saving suicide-related calls a day. And again, it's an honor to present this proclamation of the board declaring February 11th through 17th, 2024 as 211 Awareness Week. Whereas tens of thousands of people reach out to the 211 helpline each year, and whereas 211's highly trained and accredited staff are frontline responders available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas 211 is a central access number where individuals, families, and people of all ages and walks of life can find life-saving crisis support, guidance, and hope. And whereas people who struggle with mental and emotional health, addiction, and the ability to meet their basic needs of housing, utility payments, food, and other concerns can call 211's caring staff, who listen to all callers and provide available resources to help them strategize to solve problems. And whereas 211 experts provide assistance for the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, first responders, the MyFL Vet support line for veterans, and other specialized groups and their families. And whereas all residents can be assured in knowing that 211 is available to help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 211 staff also provides referrals for mental health, substance abuse, healthcare, employment, food, family services, special needs, teen programs, senior services, free income tax preparation, and other services. Now therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Palm Beach County, Florida, assembled in regular session this 6th day of February 2024, that February 11th through the 17th, 2024 in Palm Beach County is hereby proclaimed 211 Awareness Week. Want to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and thank you to the whole commission and all of county staff for your ongoing support of this life-saving and life-changing work. Many of you, I think all of you, have visited our facility. You know that you've seen the work in action and the way that our caring team helps. We are saddened that so many people are struggling, but we are gratified that we're able to be here for them. With all of these changes, you're aware that we are undergoing a capital campaign. We desperately need a new facility, so we are embarking on that. And again, just thank you so much for your support of the work and increasing the awareness. Thank you.
District 2, right. They serve the entire county.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Of course. Thank you for what you do.
Well, the next item on our agenda is public hearings, and since we have none of those, we'll move right to the regular agenda. So we are on agenda item 6A1, Public Safety Department. Would anybody like a presentation? Yes, okay. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Administrator Baker. Before you today is an agenda item from Public Safety on our countdown to zero. And this is a plan that's been in place for 10 years in Palm Beach County as part of public safety and animal care and control. And the resolution that we're going to be discussing today is one to extend the target date from February 28th, 2024 to February 28th, 2034 to achieve the goal of ending euthanasia for adoptable dogs and cats in Palm Beach County. We have some of our incredible volunteers who are with us today and joining us, and we've spent a considerable amount of time getting some of the input from them as well in 2 public hearings that we've had. And I want to thank Jan for her work and really stepping up on this particular initiative. And I'm going to introduce Stephanie to start us off in a very brief presentation for you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, or Vice Mayor, excuse me, and County Administrator. With me today, I have Dr. Woody. She's our Chief of Veterinary Services, as well as Jan Steele, our Director of Animal Care and Control, and then Shannon Fox, our Assistant County Attorney. So back in 2014, our Board of County Commissioners adopted the resolution to end euthanasia of adoptable animals by 2024. The countdown to zero was a private-public community collaboration between Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control and Peggy Adams Animal Rescue League to develop a community coalition focusing on sterilization, adoption, and intake diversion. The community coalition consists of governmental agencies, private organizations, businesses, and residents that are all working together to end euthanasia of adoptable animals. Collaboration focused on increasing trap, neuter, vaccinate, return, low-cost sterilization, and community-wide adoption events. So what were the community concerns? We had too many at-risk animals entering our shelter. At-risk animals are mainly large dogs and community cats. We've always said we are not going to adopt our way out of this situation. However, there was not enough affordable spay-neuter services available due to the lack of vets being able to perform the services. And some pet owners refuse sterilization of their animals for a variety of reasons. And we have a continuous cat season here in Florida. Why was the C to Z necessary? It was an opportunity for the county to support public expectations that we will all work to save animals. It provided clear direction to animal care and control. It established public policy that would enable long-term partnerships. It increased public access to affordable sterilization services, and it offered an opportunity for us to implement a variety of life-saving initiatives. So how was the C to Z initiative implemented? The community outreach and involvement was critical to ensure the community was aware of the impact their decisions had on our shelter. We used to take in any animal in our shelter, and now we educate the community on the importance of keeping people and pets together. We also expanded partnerships both locally and nationally with ASPCA, Maddie's Fund, and Best Friends. And we doubled our volunteer base. And I just want to mention and thank all of our volunteers. We could not have done what we do in our shelter without them. They're our biggest advocates here in Palm Beach County. Countdown to Zero was important because since its implementation, the save rate for cats and dogs dramatically increased since 2013. Cats went from 21% to an 83.4% save rate as of last year, and dogs went from 71% to an 88.1% save rate. Additionally, Countdown to Zero was so important because from 2013 to 2023, our intake for dogs and cats has dramatically dropped. With an intake of almost 20,000 animals back in 2013, the partnerships with our rescue organizations and other shelters, both locally and nationally, since the start of implementing the C to Z was critical to our operation. As you can see on this chart, there has been a steady uptick and a significant increase in the number of cats transferred out of our shelter to other rescue agencies and shelters. Sterilization was and still a huge part of the Countdown to Zero initiative and is critical to reducing the number of animals entering our shelter. As of November 2023, there were 10,168 spay-neuter surgeries performed in-house and outsourced compared to 3,865 in 2013. We estimate the end of calendar year 2023, and we're still pending some of the invoices coming in from the agencies, that number will rise to 11,500. So the chart that you see on this slide is a comparison of Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control to 30 other county shelters in Florida. If you look at the arrow pointing to the right side of the slide, we are ranked number 5 for the shelter that has the most intakes. To the left of the slide, under gross outcomes, we are significantly behind on our public adoptions, but have more animals transferred out of our shelter through the partnerships with other shelters and rescues in Palm Beach County and outside the state of Florida. So where are we today? We acknowledge that we are in a crisis, from residents dealing with housing issues that are prompting owners, surrenders, or strays, to the cost of caring for pets going up, to other private shelters and rescues dealing with overpopulation too. We understand that this is not just a Palm Beach County problem. We have been in an overcapacity since April of 2022, and we have a capacity of 144 dogs, but in order to save as many animals, we started doubling up back then in our kennels on both sides. As a result, the capacity for care is declining, so we've had to make some changes in our operations recently, and our animals are deteriorating, even making it more difficult for them to get adopted. So even though our intake and euthanasia rates have dropped significantly, as mentioned previously, animals entering our shelter are at an average rate of 35 animals today, but only leaving at 20 per day. The length of stay per animal has greatly increased, and kennels are more crowded as animals stay longer. So what does does length of stay mean? The more we try to save, the longer the length of stay for our animals, especially as the shelter is a last resort. Animals that would have been candidates for euthanasia in the past now have options. We are doing what we can to keep them alive as long as they have a good expectation and a quality of life. As you can see on this chart, our current length of stay is the highest it's been in the past 10 years at 20 days. And the 10 years prior to the start of C to Z, when euthanasia rates were very high, the length of stay for dogs was 8.29 days. So initially, the Countdown to Zero initiative didn't have a numerical goal specified, and the definition of adoptable was a matter of debate. So recently, Animal Care has sought to align both our definitions and metrics with national standards. By definition of adoptable is any animal that is not a danger to itself or the community, and it has a reasonable expectation of a good quality of life. Treatable diseases, injuries, or congenital defects are not exclusionary. If a shelter meets 90% save rate, they are often referred to as a no-kill shelter. So why 90%? Overall, the number of pets who are suffering from irremediable medical or behavioral issues that compromise their quality of life and prevent them from being rehomed typically does not make up more than 10% of all pets entering the shelter system. So what does the 10% euthanasia rate look like? The animal prognosis is poor or grave. Staff and public safety cannot be assured. It's inhumane not to euthanize. The rehabilitation is not possible, and a community cat would not naturally survive back in the wild by itself. So because the save rates fluctuate from days to weeks to months to years, depending on how you query the data, this slide demonstrates that we actually met the save rate of 90% for dogs 40 months out of the 10 years, but none for cats. It also shows that in January of 2024, the save rate for cats was 77.31%, and for dogs was 85.45%. Public meetings were held with the community on December 12th and January 18th of 2024 to solicit feedback on the Countdown to Zero initiative. At these meetings, attendees consisted of volunteers, rescue organizations, and members of the community. During these meetings, there were a variety of suggestions made, as you can see on this slide. And the good news is we are on the right track, but we can definitely do better. With the exception of developing a Countdown to Zero advisory committee, we have been working on these efforts over the past several years. And I also want to mention that we've learned a lot over the past several years. So where do we go from here? Over the past 10 years, ACC has changed the course of how we do business, and we realize that we are doing things that work, but can definitely improve in some areas. And ultimately, this is not just a county problem, as I mentioned, but a community problem, and it's going to take our entire community to end euthanasia of adoptable animals. On the left hand of the slide, you'll see these are the things that are working for us, and we've been doing over the last several years. On the right hand of the slide, we know what we have to work on. We need to dedicate more resources to enhance fostering and adoption programs. We need to increase our TNVR in those geographical hard-hit areas. We need to educate our homeowners association and insurance companies and rental properties who currently discriminate against large dogs. We need to focus our rescue efforts locally and limit puppy sales to reputable breeders. We need to strengthen our intake diversion program and connect them to available outside resources. Reinstate low-cost booster packages and minor veterinary care for at-risk communities. And we need to strengthen our animal care and control ordinance around stray hold times and microchips and other areas that we feel would limit the number of animals coming into our shelter. And we also need to continue building our public-private partnerships. And I just want to end with, as Todd mentioned earlier, our request is to extend this resolution for another 10 years, requesting to possibly rename the initiative, clarifying the definition of adoptable, clarifying metrics to define our success, promoting the positive impact animal care has on the community, and dedicating resources to diverting animals from entering our shelter. This concludes my presentation. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work you do. I would save all the animals if I could. I know we can't. A couple questions. I know in a meeting that I had with you and also with some community meetings I had where we talked about HOA associations, condo associations, even some of the senior living facilities. There's a few out there right now who are doing temperament versus size requirements for pets. And there's a couple of them that are being quite successful, allowing larger dogs. I mean, they check and make sure that, you know, they're safe. I was wondering, I know we talked about it. Mm-hmm. Could you give us some more information on how we as a board or we as a community can help encourage other HOA associations or condo buildings, any of these, to kind of take that way, because a lot of them just don't allow pets at all, or if they do, it's like a 10-pound or smaller. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think education is really important. There's this perception that the community has on big dogs, and that's not the issue. It's more just educating them on that, big dogs are not necessarily a problem, and that they could be a huge resource for a family, especially with children. We've learned that over the years that they're a positive impact to the community versus a negative. The most of the animals in our shelter are large dogs, and they're some of the friendliest dogs, and they're just these big teddy bears. So I think it's really education, and that's what we've learned over the last 10 years, that educating the community is really important and critical, because people just don't know, and you only know what you know. And I think it's also working with those HOAs and rental properties that are allowing large dogs and getting them on board and helping spread that message. So we appreciate your support that you've provided in the communities that you've spoken to, and we will definitely get a list of those. I know this is something that we've learned over the last year about the number of HOAs that are discriminating against large dogs, so we have a lot of work to do in educating them.
Okay, and a follow-up, if I may. Another issue, we do have some rental properties that allow dogs, and I know there was I think it was maybe a nonprofit group that had contacted you willing to help pay for medical expenses, that there were very few takers on that, but there was a fund of money. I was wondering, is there any conversations with nonprofits to help people pay for pet deposits to go into rentals?
So we have a variety of resources when somebody comes into our shelter that we offer, whether it's through sterilization or medical costs, vet associated bills. I'm not familiar, and I'm going to turn it over to Jan, of anything specific related to rental properties, but it's definitely something that I think we can look into if we haven't already.
So right now, none of our partners are currently offering rental assistance, but it's a really great idea. And they've been trying to help us a lot with our intake and trying to find other ways to keep animals from coming into the shelter. So I can broach that with all of our partners and see if any of them that currently have medical funds or food funds that are not being fully utilized, if they might want to consider that for rental deposits also. So thank you for that idea.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Because a lot of times, I mean, it's several $100s on top of, their first last security, and that might be enough to keep them from being able to keep their pet. So
Great
thank you
idea.
for that.
Thank you.
And also one last part, the tagline, I know we talked about countdown to zero, which, I mean, it's confusing. Some people think it's countdown to 0 dogs or countdown till the day they die. If we could work on, if we're going to keep the name, work on the tagline of really explaining that it's 0 euthanizations of adoptable pets and not 0 animals, or, so if we're going to keep the name, I think we need to make it clear what that means. And a lot of people don't understand. I didn't understand it, so.
Yeah, thank you for that information. And if I may, Vice Mayor, we did do a little survey with the community, as well as our staff within animal care and public safety, and there was mixed feelings about changing the name, but I like the idea of the tagline, and we can definitely market that in a different way. But there was a lot of efforts put in over the beginning of Countdown to Zero of that name, so I don't want to lose the history, but I do think that we need to market it in a different way.
Any other questions? And when you say renaming the initiative, you have that here under your requests. What would you see as renaming it if we did?
So we've had several creative suggestions come through a survey. One was positive communities. Every paw counts. We've had a lot of interesting feedback. And I think with the marketing team and our public affairs department, as well as our staff, we would like to take some more time to really invest, whether it's changing the name and adding a tagline or changing the artwork, because there's artwork associated with C to Z, if you notice on the front of the slide. So there was a lot of time invested into that. But those are some of the suggestions that we've moved forward with as part of the discussion, and we just need some more time to shake it out. I don't think it would require a change in the resolution, because we'll probably keep the initial Countdown to Zero, but we'll just have some other slogan or tagline associated with it, so people don't think Countdown to Zero is negative.
Thank you. Do we have any cards?
We do. We have some non-speaking cards. So Heather Smith, she is here in support of extending the Countdown to Zero initiative, and she's also been a volunteer at Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control, so thank you very much for your volunteering for the last 7 years. Maria Carmen Weinberg, she is asking that we consider approving the amendment to Countdown to Zero, extending the target date to February 28, 2034. And she has an organization, Animal Friends Project, and they're working nonstop for the past 10 years to spay and neuter as many cats as possible. Next is Linda Bartas of West Palm Beach. She is also in support. She's a volunteer trapper and trapping sick and injured cats. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's folks that need to be educated. And she unfortunately has come across people who have sick cats and looking for resources for that, and we all need to be educated. So thank you for that. And then also from Debbie Lewis from the Acreage. She is in support, and county should maintain the record resolution as a commitment to ending pet overpopulation in our communities. The state of Florida has codified this commitment in Florida Statute 825.5, which in its preamble in part, the legislature has determined the importation of dogs and cats in and the uncontrolled breeding of dogs and cats in this state poses a risk to the well-being of dogs and cats and the health of human and animals. And she goes on, she actually sent us an email as well, so lots of really good ideas, so we'll share that. And then lastly, Kathleen Turner is also in support. She's a longtime resident, and she's been assisting since she first moved here 11 years ago, and found a mother cat with 6 kittens in her backyard and took care of them, and she continues to volunteer and is looking for us to continue to provide this for another 10 years. So that's all the comments.
All righty. Do I have a motion?
I would be happy to move that.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you all for your support.
Vice Mayor, may I be recognized?
Yes, sir.
Could we please state the seconder?
Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Next page, regular agenda, Office of Financial Management and Budget, item 6B1. Would anybody like a presentation? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Motion to approve on preliminary reading and advertise for public hearing on March 12th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m.
Second? I have a second from Commissioner Baxter. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And obviously our motion carrying today without any opposition will be 6-0 since there is. Thank you. Item 6C1 and 2. I'm guessing we can do those together, and we have a presentation. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Administrator Baker. We have before you our proposed 2024 federal legislative agenda. Just to kind of give you just a little forward on that, we typically, develop this agenda as the beginning of a Congress starts, and sort of in this interim year, we come back, make some minor tweaks to it, update some of the appropriations, bring that back again. And usually the timeliness is that we're heading right up to Washington, D.C. To work on the start of the congressional session, and we're going to be doing that this coming week. Casey has joined us from Tallahassee, too, so we took her away from the fire of the Florida legislative session. And Ed has been very helpful in putting together some of the components of the federal agenda. We thank you very much. And we want to dive right into that, if we can, with a brief presentation and share a few highlights gist of some of the items that we've been working on, some things that we accomplished, and then to share a few of the new items that we are including in this proposed agenda before you today.
Thanks, Todd. Good morning, Madam Vice Mayor. This is our federal legislative agenda for 2024. We've had an opportunity to discuss some of these items with you in advance. We have one new item that has appeared after our conversation, so I'll be sure to point that out. We'll start with our Department of Transportation, our airports division. We have a number of legislative and appropriative priorities that the Department of Airports is looking for. At Palm Beach International, they are looking to redo the primary runway at PBIA. It has reached a point of condition where it is requiring major maintenance. That is a $48 million project that we will be looking to fund. At the North Palm Beach County General Aviation Airport, two items there. We are looking to extend the main runway there to 6,000 feet, which would accommodate some jet traffic, thus relieving PBIA of some of the smaller jet traffic that they might see. So that is a $35 million project to extend that runway. And in coordination with the City of Palm Beach Gardens, they have asked if we are to extend that runway, they would like to have a tower there. So we are going to look into the possibility of putting an air traffic control tower, having that funded, and that is a $10 million ask. On some other transportation issues, we have talked a lot about County Road 880 on our state agenda. It is also squarely in the sights of our federal agenda as well. Just a couple of items there. Number one, we're always on the lookout for funding mechanisms to bring money to County Road 880, but in a legislative procedural move similar to what we're doing at the state level. We are working with Congressman David Valladio from California. He's a Republican who represents the Bakersfield area, which is a big agricultural area in California. And we're looking to basically do what we're doing in Tallahassee. We're going to create in statute what a farm-to-market road is and create in statute what a significant agricultural production zone is. If we have those in statute, we would also require the Secretary of Agriculture to reserve 10% of the amounts made available for the Rural Surface Road Transportation Program and to go into that pot of money of making that available not just to us, but other farming areas across the country. You know, this is our opportunity to try to get it in statute and make sure there's a dedicated funding source there that we can have an opportunity to bring some of that money back home. And we continue looking at opportunities under the bipartisan infrastructure law. Obviously, the airport terminal program is something that we're very hot on, trying to get some of our airport issues taken care of, but also looking at transportation opportunities for grants. The county engineering department is again going to make a RAISE application, grant application. So we'll have the support of our county's legislative delegation. We'll ask them to support that request as well. And our resilience team has taken many opportunities to make grant requests and has done very well in bringing money back home to Palm Beach County on that issue. For Palm Tran, I'm going to turn it over to Deborah Posey-Blocker.
Thank you. As we look at Palm Trans funding, we were able to secure funding through the FY23 appropriations through the Federal Transit Administration, which was under the Surface Transportation legislation. We looked at Section 5339, which is part of the Bus and Bus Facility Grant. And this grant allowed us to look at replacement and rehabilitation and purchases of bus under this grant. Received about $1.9 million. For Section 5310, you guys are familiar with this one. It's a senior and disability individual grant. This provides transportation for our seniors and our disabled and our transit disadvantaged customers for Palm Tran. This was about $1 million under FY23 grant. Section 5311, which is the capital grants funds, which is allowing us to continue with operational expenses. This was very helpful with Palm Tran with operations expenses through the FY23 funding. Moving forward and looking at FY25, we're looking to secure funding for bus shelter expansion, which we're looking for about $1 million. That's for 14 additional shelters. And as we know, we have about 3,000 bus shelters throughout our county. And during our our times when there's heat and rain and weather conditions, it's really important that we keep our customers safe and secure during those times. And as we look into greenhouse emissions under EV charging stations is another funding that we're looking at. This would help us be more efficient and be part of doing our part in getting our vehicles, hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles under this funding.
In the environmental and natural resources arena, this past year in 22, under our WARDA, we were able to get some provisions to allow for projects for restoration under the Lake Worth Lagoon, as well as Lake Okeechobee, and now working on getting some of the appropriations tied to that. We also have been engaged in conversations with the Army Corps of Engineers, particularly on its CAP projects. Right now, those funding levels are capped at about $10 million. Those are decades old, and they understand the need to try to increase those, so we're asking for an increase up to $12.5 million on that, and then also looking at some additional federal funding for our Green K to match some of the dollars that this board has provided, as well as other grants from the state. Under SERP, the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, many of you are familiar with the trials and tribulations of both federal and state funding and trying to keep up with the project as a whole. Obviously, there were lots of projects under SERP that were initially authorized, that were not authorized in subsequent years, and likewise under the Lake O Watershed Plan, as well as on the Locks River Watershed Plan, which is part of that Northern Everglades component. We're working to continue to support some of the projects for those two very important projects. LOSIM, or the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual, is out right now in terms of its comments, and the Corps is reviewing that. We're working under LORS. You might have read this week about some of the levels at Lake Okeechobee and keeping it at 16.5 feet. That's under LORS. We still have some issues that we're working through on LOSIM, and we appreciate the board's support on that as well. And then if you look at our climate compact issues under our agenda, we've got about a dozen or so issues that we've updated in there, but one that specifically we wanted to mention was the Coastal Storm Risk Management Program, and that's the more comprehensive approach that the Corps is taking, and we're asking them for the South Florida area to do a broader study that will then create the blueprint for both our state and our federal water resources and capital resources that are managed by them, so that we know in the future how we can approach those. In public safety and disaster relief, again, our FEMA coastal flooding maps, we've submitted and we're waiting for the scientific panel review on that. Federal catastrophic insurance, I know that's something that Commissioner Bernard has talked about a number of times out in public as we wrestle with the insurance crisis that we're working with and asking the federal government to look at a more comprehensive approach around the nation. Our National Flood Insurance Program as well is reauthorized until close to the end of 2024. And then our Glades Region Flood Map insurance maps, because of the completion of the Herbert Hoover Dike, we're asking for those flood maps in that region to be updated so that we better reflect more accurate insurance prices for those folks, because a lot of those safety provisions are in place.
On some housing issues, we continue to work on farm worker housing, particularly in the Glades area. We're looking for an increase in programmatic funding for the USDA Farm Labor Housing Loan and Grant Program to move that dollar amount up to $25 million nationwide. Hopefully we can bring some of that back to Palm Beach County. And we're looking to increase the Department of Labor's Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act National Farm Worker Jobs Program to $15 million in an effort, again, to try to bring some of that money back. On rural definition USDA housing, we continue to try to work with the United States Department of Agriculture in changing the way that they look at the Glades area. The USDA is a little different than HUD. USDA looks at the county as a whole, and they do not allow single-family housing programs in the Glades region. We need to continue to try to explain our issues with them and try to be able to find a way to peel that off to bring some relief and support to our Glades area housing issues. We continue to look to HUD to ask them to change the way that they look at their income limits. We would like to utilize median household income rather than median family income, and that way it would lower the maximum HUD rental rates in Palm Beach County as a whole. We're hoping to meet with HUD department officials when we're up there next week for NACO. Other human services issues, we continue to support Community Services Block Grant. We support their reauthorization through 2030 31, we'd love to see that through 2034 to make that a 10-year authorization. On veterans homelessness, we are looking to support a couple of bills. One of which is by Representative Sheila Sheriffless McCormick. It's H.R. 645, the Healthy Foundations for Homeless Veterans Act. And that would permanently authorize the Department of Veterans Affairs to use funding to provide assistance to homeless veterans and veterans participating in HUD's VASH program. We're also looking to support Senator Marco Rubio on his Senate Bill 290, the Preserving Our Commitment to Homeless Veterans Act, which would require the VA to provide case management support to local housing authorities under the VA-supported housing program. Fiscal cliff issues is a new issue that we added. It's not a new issue to the county or to our Department of Community Services Director James Green, but it's something that kind of bubbled up in a conversation with Commissioner Baxter. We were looking on issues of family caregiving issues, but the fiscal cliff is very simply as your income increases, your benefits on certain programs might decrease or fall out altogether. That is not helpful in helping people work their way out of poverty and create a pathway to economic self-sufficiency. Fiscal cliff issues with regard to the federal government could be SNAP funding, could be child care subsidies, housing utility assistance. Same issues at the state level that we'll probably start to work on next year. That could the number one issue there is kid care. So those are issues that kind of bubbled up. So that's thanks to James Green for kind of pushing that, but that's something that we'll look for in our future legislative agenda. Ban the box actually is an issue that we've taken off the legislative agenda this year. It was the Fair Chance Act that we supported for the past couple of years. The Department of Personnel Management changed the rules for the way that the federal government does employment. So as a person applies for federal employment, they cannot ask about your previous conviction situation upon application. If a federal agency then offers you a position, then at that time they are able to ask you about your previous conviction. But this way it doesn't actually just wipe people off with a previous conviction from applying for a federal job. Some convictions are treated differently than others. It may disqualify you from a job offer. It may not, but it does encourage people to go ahead and apply for those jobs. Other health and human services issues, a couple of hunger issues. We are looking for funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP program, food stamps. We're looking for full funding for the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and within the SNAP program, we're always looking for maximum flexibility to help families find the most appropriate choices for themselves. The Farm Bill itself was set for sunset on September 30th of this past year. The legislature, the Congress and the President signed a bill to extend that to September 30th of 2024. So all the funding for those programs continues, but at some point in time, they are going to have to do the hard work to reauthorize and change that Farm Bill. The SNAP portion of that bill remains extremely high. It's anywhere from we heard Congressman Thompson say 75%. USDA says 84% of the money goes to the SNAP program from the food bill. So it's a huge chunk of money. With Congress, divided Congress, that's going to be a very heated discussion over the next couple of months. And also a new item is the WIC program, Women's, Infants, and Children. Again, not new to those of us in the hunger world, but two items on the WIC program. Number one, the USDA is concerned that they're going to be about $1 billion short in funding to take care of all of those who are eligible for that program. That program is set to run out of funding on March the 1st. It's unlike the SNAP program. The SNAP program is done and kind of set as the Farm Bill is, but this is a yearly appropriation. So we're looking to try to bring that dollar amount up $1 billion to make sure to have everyone covered. And number two, to encourage our legislative partners to make sure to get that funded in advance of the March 1st funding deadline for all USDA programs. Another new issue is the HIV/AIDS issue in the state of Florida. HIV patients are taken care of by the county. The Florida Department of Health is not responsible for that treatment. They are responsible only for prevention and testing and maybe some counseling. The Palm Beach County Healthcare District, if they have a patient, they will refer them over to the county. So we are responsible for that. We receive Ryan White AIDS funding from the CDC to cover the cost of that care. The issue that we've discovered over the past year is if someone from New York travels to Florida or moves to Florida, the money is intended to follow the patient from the state to state. So we should be receiving that money. It is clear that the CDC is 2, 3, 4 years behind in having that money follow the patient directly. So we're set footing the bill to take care of those folks. So we're working with Representative Frankel's office to see if there's a way to move that time frame up quicker, so we're not footing the bill for that time. On sober homes, we continue to support clarifications to prevent the abuse and exploitation of patients and make sure that we protect nearby residents as best we can. We continue to work on opioids and substance abuse disorder. We're looking for full funding for the 21st Century Cures Act. That's about $4 billion over a 5-year period to help reduce use, take care of some treatment, and help with some anti-drug development issues. That is a yearly appropriation, so even if that bill is passed, it's something that we'd have to fight for funding for every year. And on the issue of temporary protected status, the validity of TPS from people from Haiti is due to expire August 3rd of this year. I would expect the Department of Homeland Security to extend that. Other countries that have been on our list to watch, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Sudan, and Nepal, they are scheduled to end sometime in mid-2025. And then on cyber issues, we continue to work with our libraries in making sure that there's full funding for the Library Services and Technology Act. We continue to work on broadband access, looking for funding opportunities through the BEAD Act. And a new issue this year, obviously, is artificial intelligence. That's an issue that we'll talk about a little bit when we go through the mid-session legislative state update. But I wanted to just give Commissioner Weiss an opportunity as sort of being our AI leader to maybe talk a little bit about some of our concerns on the national front of AI going forward.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so we're looking at policy from the federal government to support the development of AI, supporting companies, providing tax incentives here in Palm Beach County, our academic and research institutions, funding for them as they work on artificial intelligence, asking for the federal government to look at creating federal ethical guidelines to be promulgated. Also looking at how we're going to transition the workforce and looking for support for educational programs to help retrain workforce as artificial intelligence moves further into our economy. Looking at increasing a public awareness campaign, promoting cross-sector collaboration, and monitoring what's going on with AI and any policy adjustments that may be needed for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then wrapping it up finally on some of the potential funding opportunities. First, we wanted to update you on where we are in the status of some of our earmark requests in the current year in FY24's budget that is currently being discussed in Congress. We have included in there $959,000 for Green K Phase 2, $500,000 for Palm Tran bus shelters, and $2.25 million for workforce affordable housing development. And as you can see on this slide, members of Congress Frankel, Moskowitz, and Shifless-McCormick have submitted those and then included them in that budget at our request. So we thank them for that, and we look forward to hopefully that budget being passed so that we can move on to the FY25. And this is a list of some of the items both included in some of the write-ups that we've discussed here, and also some that we've extrapolated from some of the discussions from the Board of County Commissioners. Included in that in addition to things that you might see printed right now, are some of the Restore Reentry, Senior Art and Education programs, our Fresh Food Box program that we've been looking for funding from the state, our Hispanic Resource Center, State Black History Museum, the Village of Valor and Liberty Village, a veterans-related project, the Airport Rental Car Center that came up recently, look at FAA and others to see if there's maybe some grant funding opportunities for those kinds of things, and then our West Atlantic Park West improvements. And Madam Vice Mayor, that concludes our presentation to you on some of the items that we hope to accomplish in the coming year on the federal level.
Okay, Commissioner Weiss, you're up first.
Thank you very much. I just want to put on your radar, and I apologize for not doing it sooner, but there is legislation to extend the Affordable Connectivity Program. That's, in fact, as of tomorrow, FCC will no longer be taking new applications because funding is running out. That's HR 6929 and Senate Bill 3565. It's bipartisan, bicameral, and that will extend the funding through 2024. National Association of Counties, of course, is advocating for this as well as many communities, obviously, across the country. So just put that on your radar. But thank you very much, and thank you for the comprehensive update.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Just a couple of things. Thank you for the presentation. I know that the House had passed the sweeping tax package, and I don't know if it's where it's at in the Senate, but you know, I'd love for us to continue to monitor the tax package, because first of all, it increases the child tax credit, and then also there's another piece that also includes more units for the low-income housing. I think it includes about 200,000 units throughout the country for rehab and new workforce affordable housing. Also want to thank you for including the rental car center as we're, looking at the airport master plan. I'm hoping that we are able to find some funds from there. And also thank you to Commissioner Baxter for bringing up the fiscal cliff, because I think that's something that's very important for us to address. And then finally, you had mentioned the lake level, and I'm really concerned about the lake being a little bit too high. So I'd love to, while we're in DC, if we're able to meet with the Army Corps of Engineering and see what can be done in regard to that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other lights on. I do have one quick question, actually, too. The airport we have for the North County, do we have all our environmental issues cleared up yet?
So we are currently working with the federal government on that. We've worked pretty closely with Laura at the airport. They are getting close to some of that study that the federal government has asked, the FAA has asked for, as well as an economic impact study as well that's run concurrent with that environmental impact. So we're going to be, that's one of the issues that we'll be discussing when we're in Washington, D.C., just to make sure that that continues to move along. I don't want to give you the date when we think that will be done, but hopefully, it'll be done sometime mid-year. And we're going to be working closely with our members of Congress on the appropriation side of that for the runway extension component of that, so that we're all doing that concurrently, and as they come back to us with good news, that we hopefully have the funding there to be able to have that in place.
And for the CERT plan, are we partnering with Martin County or other counties to sort of have a unified voice for this?
Yeah, I mean, so, the whole idea, too, with the 16-county coalition and bringing that group together, and I know Ed has spent a lot of time, working with them over the years, is to really have that unified voice. Yes, we are working together, and particularly with our South Florida counties, but, sometimes some of the issues, particularly with the Lake Worth Lagoon, are ones that sort of fall a little bit towards the bottom of some of the priority lists when we have some of those discussions on the overall restorations. So we want to do what we can to try to push those a little bit more to the forefront, both the lagoon and the Loxahatchee River. The St. Lucie River gets a lot of attention. It gets a lot of funding. The Caloosahatchee, the same. And we think that our water resources that we have here, both the Lox River and the Lake Worth Lagoon, warrant that same type of financial consideration from both the state and the federal government, as does Lake Okeechobee. So we're going to keep working to advocate for that. But, you know, sometimes other water bodies seem to have gotten a little bit more light shine on them and a little bit higher funding, you know, allocation in that regard.
Thank you. Administrator Baker.
Just on a much lighter note, we're in our packet, we're asking the federal government to ban the box, but I wanted to make sure this board knows that we banned the box back in 2015, and we have given a number of returning citizens a second opportunity, and they have turned out to be very outstanding employees. So this board is ahead of the federal government on banning the box.
Thank you. And Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you very much, Todd, Casey, Ed, for all the work you're doing, Tallahassee and Washington. I had a couple of questions. With regards to the airports, there was discussion about a tower for the North County Airport. Has there been any discussion about advocating for a tower at the Lantana Airport? My understanding is there was a safety assessment done. I'm not sure what the results of that safety assessment was. If there's a need for a tower, have you heard anything?
I'm going to defer to Commissioner Weiss on that because I know he has been really working on that particular issue. With
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy. So we are awaiting the safety assessment, and then once, you know, what the outcome of that would then determine whether or not we would move forward in requesting that. So.
Got it. I appreciate it. Thank you. The other thing, I wanted to thank you for advocating for covered bus shelters. We've had discussions going back to when I was first appointed, the call for coverings, especially in my district, one of the most heavily used routes in all of Palm Beach County regarding the Palm Tran routes. I guess I'll reach out to Moskowitz, Representative Moskowitz, and thank him for carrying that for us. Is there any county money allocated for getting the ball rolling on building covered bus shelters?
Commissioner, we have some funding that is available for some of our bus shelters, and part of it is we've been out for an RFP for a new contract on our providers for that. Hopefully we'll be having that settled fairly soon, but I expect that you will see some new bus shelters going up this fiscal year.
Thank you, and of course, thank you very much for including the Hispanic Resource Center in our list of federal priorities.
Stay on.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Motion? Would anybody like to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay, and a second? Oh, did you get that? Commissioner Bernard, Commissioner Baxter. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And now let's go to item C2.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So Casey has been doing some incredible work up in Tallahassee with our team, managing the day-to-day of that, and it's great that we have an opportunity to have her in front of the board today. We always find that this mid-session update before the BCC gives you an opportunity to kind of see where we're at right now with some of the priorities that you've charged us with, as well as maybe call a little bit additional attention to a couple of the items that are going on there. So Casey, please, I'll ask you to start it out.
Thank you. Let's try that again. Thank you. Good morning, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, County Administrator. I'm going to start out with housing and economic development. As you all know, last session, the Live Local Act was passed, which had sweeping impacts across the state. And this year they are back with what they're referring to, some are referring to as a glitch bill. There are a few items included in that bill that are part of our legislative agenda that we have advocated for. A couple of the things I just want to highlight from this legislation is the bill does preempt local government's floor area ratio for qualifying improvements. And prohibits qualifying developments within a quarter-mile of a military installation from utilizing the administrative approval process. The bill also exempts airport-impacted areas, which was one thing that was included in our legislative agenda to ensure compatible land use. It also clarifies that a local government's currently allowed density, height, and floor area ratio does not include any bonuses, variances, or other special exceptions that are provided for in regulations. It requires a qualifying development within a TOD to be a mixed-use residential use, and appropriates $100 million for the Hometown Hero program, among other provisions. So that bill is moving through the process. It is changing by the day. Amendments are being filed to it, so we're going to continue to monitor that as it moves through the process. The other issue in this regard is property insurance, and we're actually going to discuss this in a later slide because we know that this is an important issue across the state, but also to this commission. So Ed will touch on that at the end in our top 10 items to watch. Continuing on with
hold on one
housing
second.
and economic
Commissioner Baxter?
I read it, I just didn't hear you say they're also looking at not allowing industrial
They have.
space.
Yes, Commissioner, they did originally in the bill require to pull out industrial properties. However, it was later amended to leave that back in the law as it's currently written. So that's something that is a part of our state legislative agenda that we are working on. But right now, as it stands, that's not something that's being changed by this legislation.
Thank you.
Moving on to some other housing and economic development issues, the Job Growth Grant Fund. The governor had proposed $100 million for this fund in his proposed budget. The House has allocated $25 million while the Senate has allocated $75 million. So we'll see how that shakes out in budget conference. With the rural jobs tax credit, there's no legislation that's currently making changes to this program. However, Senator Simon from the Tallahassee area has been championing a lot of rural issues, and so we're looking forward to working with him potentially next session to address this item on our legislative agenda. With regard to Visit Florida, the governor asked for $105 million in his proposed budget. The House has allocated $30 million for Visit Florida, and the Senate has $80 million appropriated. So again, that's going to be an issue that gets sorted out during the budget conference. And then as far as the Glades regional initiatives, there is legislation out there right now that's moving through the process, which would amend the Regional Rural Development Grants Program to remove some of those match requirements and other requirements that have prohibited or created barriers from rural areas from accessing these funds. So that is good legislation in this regard that's moving through the process.
In the area of substance use and mental health, first, we want to thank Senator Harrell and Representatives Caruso, who have championed this legislation for us time and time again in working with our state attorney and our Sober Homes Task Force. Actually, as we're speaking today, the Senate bill is up in committee in Tallahassee. The House bill has cleared one committee already, and this does a number of different things, amending some of the definitions of the different levels of sober homes that are out there, as well as expanding some of the statewide opioid task force that's out there to include some additional components of that. And then on the area of substance use and mental health funding, again, wanted to call attention to the work that Chair Gail Harrell of our delegation is doing, also as the chair of the HHS Appropriations Committee in the Senate. Recently as this week, the governor had made some announcements about another bill that we're going to talk about soon, but specifically talking about mental health needs and wanting to add additional dollars to the state budget for that area. So we're hopeful that that's triggering some things to come here in the next couple of weeks with some additional funds that we might see related to substance use and mental health treatment.
With regard to Health and Human Services, there are some guardianship bills that have been receiving some committee hearings. One set of bills aims to protect vulnerable populations from financial exploitation by authorizing banks to slow down transactions if they suspect that there is some sort of fraud occurring or being attempted. And there's a set of other bills that would allow for a supportive decision-making model, which empowers people to make life choices with a supporter rather than a guardian. So those are two issues that we are watching with regard to guardianship. There's also legislation relating to sleeping in public places, which would prohibit local governments from allowing public camping and public sleeping on public property, buildings, or rights of way without a lawfully issued temporary permit. Local governments can designate certain property that they own for public camping or sleeping, but DCF has to ensure that certain criteria are met. The governor just recently did a press conference lending his support to this bill down in Miami Beach, and the bill continues to move through the committee process. Also on community ID cards, Senate Bill 1174 and House Bill 1451, you'll recall last year they prohibited local governments from being able to fund these ID cards. This legislation this year would prohibit a local government from accepting as a form of identification an ID card that they know is issued to people who are not lawfully present in the United States.
So in the area of public safety and criminal justice, a couple of priorities of the board are juvenile detention center replacement. Last year, we got the funding for the design of the facility here in Palm Beach, Broward, and Hillsborough County. This year, the capital funding is for Hillsborough County, with then next year and the year after for Palm Beach and Broward County. So we're continuing to push the Hillsborough property piece so that we can get that funded this year and then get back to ours the next year for that. The possession and use of firearm, this was one of those issues about prohibiting the use of firearms in sensitive locations. Within that include county facilities. We're just monitoring this piece of legislation right now. It hasn't moved in either the House or Senate, but we just wanted to keep you updated on that. But the discharging of a firearm in residential areas is one that I think a number of you, and we had members of our public come and speak to you about this particular issue. It's been heard once in the Senate, and the way that the Senate modified this bill was that they treat the bullet itself as a, when it leaves a property somewhere else, that the bullet would be cited for trespass under the laws of the state, which would be a third-degree felony under the law. And so it was a creative way that they used to try to address this issue. The bill hasn't moved in the House, but that's how the Senate sponsor wanted to move it forward. So just wanted to share that piece with you today. The veterinary practices and rabies vaccination, those two both deal with some of the telehealth that we've been working on, both to allow for veterinarians to work with our animal care and control through telehealth, and then also the rabies vaccination allows for our staff at Animal Care and Control to administer rabies vaccination under the guidance of a veterinarian who might be working via telemedicine. So those would be great opportunities for us. And then finally, under human trafficking, the two pieces of legislation, these are just as we continue to focus on human trafficking. I think Palm Beach County has really been at the forefront of the changes in legislation over the years. This is just another piece of legislation out there that would prohibit individuals younger than 21 years of age from working in adult entertainment establishments, and we are continuing to monitor that piece of legislation as it moves forward. Casey?
The next few slides we're going to spend some time on because there are a lot of local government and administration centered bills. The first one is one of the priorities of this board. It's the bill relating to impact fees and mobility fees. This legislation would allow cities to establish a mobility fee system or an alternative system and collect the fees on county thoroughfares that they do not own that run through the city's boundaries. It requires that the permitting local governments collect and account for extra jurisdictional impacts, but is silent as to how those mechanics of collection and accounting would occur, and it requires impact fees be based on localized data from the last 12 months. This bill would have a significant negative impact to a critical funding source for assisting in building capacity on the county's spine roads to get people through the county, not just through municipalities, and basically would allow cities to determine a lot of what we do on our county thoroughfares. We are working with the sponsors of this legislation to try to improve it and get it in a good posture as we move forward through session. There's also legislation relating to building permits. There's 4 separate bills that have been quickly moving through the committee process. The first would require us to set up an expedited permitting process to issue a certain percentage of building permits before a final plat is recorded in certain developments. The other 2 bills drastically shorten timeframes for the processing of building permits and reduce the number of times we can ask for additional information of the applicants. We're going to continue to monitor those bills moving forward as well, and they change day to day with amendments. Also, on continuing contracts, this would increase the maximum limit for continuing contracts for an estimated per project construction cost from $4 million to $7.5 million, plus an annual CPI adjustment beginning in 2026. Sovereign immunity has been a topic that has come back year after year. There seems to be a coalition forming around the $400,000 and $600,000 caps for per person and per incident. Right now it stands at $200,000 per person and $300,000 per incident cap. This would increase that. In the Senate bill, they actually tie the caps to the CPI to be adjusted every 5 years. It would also allow a local government to settle a claim and pay the claim without going through the claims bill process. Moving on to local preferences, this legislation would change the definition of a public works project. This has come up year after year in the legislature, and it would preclude us from applying local preference to local businesses that are bidding on our public works projects, even if they're funded with their own local revenues entirely. You'll see this theme pop up again with regard to prohibiting us from allowing contractors or requiring contractors to pay a specific prescribed wage rate in accordance with our living wage ordinance. And we'll talk about that in some of these bills moving forward. Local business taxes, this has mainly been a House-focused effort. The bill started out originally repealing all local government authority to levy business taxes and has now been amended to limit the amount of revenue that a local government can receive from these taxes. So it's all based on the revenue from fiscal year 23 to 24, and if we were to receive more in local business tax revenue the next fiscal year, the local government would be required to reduce its rates and issue refunds or credits. The bill has not been heard in the Senate at this point. It's only made it through, I believe, one committee in the House side. On a positive news front, there is a bill that we've been working on for several years, the public records exemption for city and county attorneys. Both of the House and the Senate bill are ready to be heard on the floor. There is a public records exemption bill that is going to be heard for city and county administrators, and that's going to be heard in the Senate for the first time this week. Vehicles for hire, this bill would require reciprocity for vehicles for hire if they are permitted or licensed in another jurisdiction. That means that they wouldn't be required to pay our fee or abide by the consumer protections outlined in our ordinance, and both bills are waiting to be heard in their final committee. On property assessed clean energy, the Senate bill includes the clarification for the legislative intent that PACE providers operating in a local government, aka a city or county's jurisdiction, that they must abide by their ordinance that governs PACE. The Senate bill is ready for the floor and I believe is placed on the special order calendar. So the Senate bill is moving and we're hopeful that the House will take up that legislation. On vacation rentals, this is another issue that's come back year after year and will likely be determined in the final few days and few weeks of the legislative session. It preempts the regulation of vacation rental advertising platforms to the state. Those are your Airbnb, VRBO platforms, and authorizes local governments to create a local registration program. The House and Senate are still ironing out the details as to what they want us to be able to do with regard to the local registration program. But as of right now, we are going to be allowed by the bill to require a designated point of contact that must be able to be reachable 24/7 if there are issues with the rental. Lastly, on special districts, this is a bill that has kind of evolved over the past few months. It establishes 12-year term limits for governing boards of most independent special districts. Most notably, it repeals the municipal conversion process in statute by which a special district could convert to a municipality without legislative approval. That's an item that's included in our state legislative agenda that's addressed in this legislation. There was a requirement for special districts to come back and get a continuation by referendum every set number of years. That was amended out of the bill and is no longer included in the bill. It also prohibits the creation of new safe neighborhood improvement districts. And the last local government and administration slide, we have a public records exemption for animal foster and adoption information so that cannot become public record. Both bills are waiting to be heard in their last committee of reference. There was legislation and still is related to dangerous dogs. Time's running out for this bill as it's still waiting a hearing in a substantive committee. It would have required dangerous dog owners to securely confine their dog and create a statewide registry of dangerous dogs with the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Back to our theme on public works projects, this legislation is one that would allow us to keep our local preferences if the project was funded solely with our own revenues, but would not allow us to prescribe the wage rate for contractors working on those projects to pay their employees. Tourist development tax, this is something we're watching that came out from a situation in a different part of the state. It would prohibit a plan for tourist development from allocating more than 25% of TDT revenue to one project unless there was an approval by a supermajority of the county's governing board. Lastly, on employment regulations and workplace heat exposure requirements, workplace heat exposure requirements would be preempted to the state. The Senate bill does allow us to still create those for our own direct employees, but the House bill actually preempts workplace heat exposure requirements and all other regulation of terms and conditions of employment to the state.
On some good news in environmental and natural resources, the legislature has allocated $50 million towards beach and inlet management projects, which will fund a number of our county priorities within that allocation. And the C-51 reservoir, and fourth year in a row, we have $50 million in there, so we've received a considerable amount of money for that project in Palm Beach County and continue to support that. The electric vehicle piece of legislation, that was one that Vice Mayor Marino had asked us to keep a close eye on. That has since turned into a study by the legislature. It's a 3-year look that they're asking their Office of Economic and Demographic Research to compile data about the impacts of EVs on state related gas taxes and other taxes, come back to the legislature with a report in 2026, and then ask the legislature in 2027 to look at that report for some potential and possible policy changes. So that's where that piece of legislation is right now. On the dredging and beach restoration, even though we've got some of the funding in there, these bills aren't moving about new requirements on permitting and the like for dredging and beach restoration. And then on the agritourism bill that was filed, that would prohibit, local governments from adopting ordinances for certain agritourism venues or prohibiting certain local ordinances. That bill is not moving anywhere at the current time, and we'll just keep you posted as we review that. Dialing into some of our appropriation requests as we round out our update to you, we just wanted to share with you about some of the many items that are in there, and by all means, we didn't give you a total list of all the Palm Beach County projects over the next few slides, but wanted to share some that were important. So the Central Palm Beach County Historic Infrastructure Improvements, one that we've been working with on the central part of the county with Commissioner Barnett. We have $500,000 right now in the House. And just so you know, when we see House or Senate, to have money right now on one side of the budget, meaning the House or the Senate, means that issue's in play. That means that these bills will be reconciled in a conference process in the last weeks of session. So the whole idea and goal on appropriations at this point in session is getting something on one side of the budget to be in play for those conference discussions, because it's a little bit more difficult when you don't have it in either side. One exception to that, I think, is going to be on County Road 880 on our road reconstruction. While we're showing no money on either side, the legislature just dropped a draft of the Department of Transportation bill that includes a provision that we've drafted to create a dedicated funding source for this road as well as others like this, those farm-to-market roads. So we're really excited about the prospect of moving that policy forward and then getting subsequent proviso language in the bill to create some broader funding sources to fund this, not just next year, but over a multi-phase period over multi-years. So we're excited about the opportunity there. Our Palm Beach County Fire Rescue water vehicles funded in the Senate, $385,000. Those are some of the airboats for the Glades and communities. Our Green Cave Phase 2 has $500,000. Our Lake Worth Lagoon Initiative has close to $500,000, and we have $90,000 in for the Locks River Preservation Initiative. Hopefully, we'll be able to bump that up. As we go on to Peanut Island Historic Restoration, about $350,000 in the Senate, $400,000 for our Restore Reentry Program in the Glades, $1 million for our West Delray All Abilities Play Park, and then $750,000 for our Westgate CRA street lighting and safety. Thank you, Commissioner Bernard, for your work on that particular appropriation. Those are some of the top priorities, and then rounding out just a few others that of interest, and by all means, there are dozens of water projects that are funded for municipalities throughout your districts. We can share that more comprehensive list with you, but to just share some of these other highlights, the Butterfly House, $282,000. The signalization project that we submitted in West Palm along Okeechobee, $3.6 million. Thank you, Commissioner Weiss, for your efforts on that. The YMCA, $750,000. The Palm Beach State College Emergency Training Center at $1 million. The Palm Springs Congress Avenue Sewer Workforce Main, $350,000 in Commissioner Barnett's district. Some of the South Bay Stormwater, $180,000, as well as $1 million for the South Florida Fair Emergency Management Shelter. Thank you, Commissioner Baxter, for your support of that. Palm Beach Shores Dredging Project, something very important to the Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor Marino, there is $500,000 in there now for that. And then some Delray Beach funding for emergency management response of $300,000, and then some JARC community work program that we've got. One other issue, too, that I just wanted to bring up, about $358,000 in there that we've been working with Senator Powell on the north end of the county for the Teach, Touch, and the Trades project with Edna Runner Center, et cetera. So we do have $358,000, and I wanted to point that out because that was something that we tried to work hard to get money last year that was vetoed. This is a little bit more fine-tuned request, and hopefully have some successes with that. So Ed, just to bring us home with our other issues to watch.
So these were sort of top 10 issues going into the legislative session, either put forth by the executive or put forth by legislative leaders. So we'll just count them down quickly. Some are more interesting than others. Number 10, artificial intelligence. Commissioner Weiss, I know you've been following these bills. One creates the Government Technology Modernization Council. That council would then recommend legislation and attempt to evaluate common standards for AI safety and security throughout the state. It also has a transparency issue where it would require AI producers to alert users that AI is being used in that process. That's sort of the main AI bill. It is in the House and the Senate. It's in its last committee going forward. There's another bill that was on the use of AI in political advertising. So it basically said if AI is used in political ad, that ad must have a disclaimer. And if there was a complaint to be made, that complaint would be made to the Florida Elections Commission. And finally, a Bill 1780 and House Bill 757, defamation and false light. So this was a bill to prevent AI producers from presenting people in a false light using maybe a deep fake image or something to that effect. This bill also had a much larger section on defamation changes, which was similar to the bill that was proposed last year. This bill has not been heard in the Senate and has its second hearing in the House, was this morning at 8 o'clock. On property insurance, two bills. On 1106, this relates to the Citizens Property Insurance Corp. So this would raise the cap that Citizens would be able to insure from $700,000 to $1 million. That bill has not yet been heard in the House, and it's in its second committee in the Senate. It's not moving quickly. The other property insurance bill was an issue to allow insurers to offer to residential insurance policy holders coverage equal to the unpaid principal balance of any mortgage that they might have on that property. That bill has neither been heard in the House nor Senate, so it does not appear to be moving forward in any way. Number 8 is social media. It is House Bill 1, so that should tell you pretty much how this bill is going to progress. It has already passed the House. It would prohibit anyone from the age of under the age of 16 from opening or keeping a social media account. It did pass the House 106 to 13, which is, for the House, a pretty bipartisan way to pass a bill. It had its first hearing in the Senate yesterday, and they added an amendment that would make clear that this ban wouldn't affect email or texting applications, some news content, some online shopping, some professional creative networks, some professional development creative networks like LinkedIn. So it has one more stop in the Senate. Those bills clearly are substantively different, and they'll have to work those out going forward in conference. Number 7, monuments and flag display. how Senate Bill 1122 would prohibit the removal of historical monuments and memorials and preempts the removal of such to the state, declaring void any ordinances, regulations, or executive actions related to the removal, damage, or destructions of these monuments. During the process, backers did make some changes, including no longer suggesting retroactive penalties going back to 2016. Instead, they're going to target only future removals. The measure now allows local governments to an option to relocate monuments permanently, but the relocation must occur on public property under a very set circumset of conditions. The Senate version still remains a little different. It says if a local government elected official who, while acting in his or her official capacity, knowingly and willingly violates the provisions of this bill, he or she may be subject to suspension or removal from office by the governor. That bill is being heard in the Senate in its second of three committees today, and it is still in its second of three committees in the House. Senate Bill 1120 is the display of flags by government entities. This bill would prohibit a government agency, local government, or any public school, college, or university from erecting or displaying a flag that represents a political viewpoint, including a politically partisan, racial, sexual orientation, gender, or political ideology viewpoint. This bill has yet to be heard in its first committee in the House and has yet to be heard in its first committee in the Senate. Number 6 is the employment of minors. This bill has already passed the House, 80 to 35. Again, much more of a bipartisan passing. So this bill would remove restrictions from 16 and 17-year-olds from working more than 8 hours when they have classes the next day, and from working more than 30 hours a week when school is in session. So that bill passed the House. The Senate bill is a little narrower. It caps 16 and 17-year-olds working hours from 30 hours a week, whether they have school or not. So that bill has passed the House and is going through the Senate. It's in its second of third committees in the Senate. Number 5, the state bird is not exactly what I thought it was, but it would designate the American flamingo as the official state bird, replacing the mockingbird. So the Florida Association of Mockingbird Enthusiasts is very upset about this and is planning to fight this bill tooth and nail. Number 4, pari-mutuel facilities. So this was a bill focusing on Miami-Dade and Broward County, so that would allow the owner of an existing gambling permit that includes slot machines to be able to move that permit location up to 30 miles away inside either Miami-Dade or inside Broward County, provided that the new location was at least 15 miles away from casinos run by the Seminole Tribe of Florida. This bill has not been heard in the House yet. This bill was supposed to be heard in Regulated Industries last week. It was very unceremoniously pulled at the last second once the Speaker of the House voiced his opposition and half the population of Miami Beach threatened to come to Tallahassee to complain about the bill. Number 3, millage increases. This bill provides that a 2/3 vote of a governing body of a county, municipality, or independent special district would be required to pass any millage rate increase, except where a higher vote threshold is already required by law. That bill is in State Affairs tomorrow in the House, and it is in its second of 3 committees in the Senate on Thursday. Number 2, abortion. There was a kind of a question as to whether there would be any abortion bills this session and what they would look like. So it turned out that there was very little interest in that area. There were 2 House bills that basically banned abortion outright. They have not been heard in any committee in the House. There was no such legislation filed in the Senate. I believe the reason for that is that the Florida Supreme Court is still ready to rule or waiting to rule on the 15-week abortion law. Once they rule on that from 2 years ago, then that may cover or may change the 6-week abortion law that was passed last year. And then number 1, taxes. So this is the season that we expect to see the bill for tax holidays. There were there were several offered in the governor's budget. There were 2 14-day back-to-school holidays, 2 disaster preparedness holidays, a 7-day tool holiday, and a 3-month freedom summer holiday. And we would expect to see that bill forthcoming.
So, commissioners, there's a whole lot of legislation going on in Tallahassee. Wish us luck as we enter the second half of the state legislative session. Thank you for your indulgence. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. 2 questions that I wanted to ask. The first one being back at the beginning on sober homes. task force. I have a couple of residences in my district that have certification through, I think it's FAR. I was looking through my email to try to find it, but the certifications aren't actually tied to a physical address. It's tied to an organization, and they can have multiple homes to do this as long as they're certified. And I was wondering, is there anything in this legislation that would work towards, actually identifying the location of the sober home, that the organization gets certified instead of just an organization that gets it, and then they can have 20 homes all throughout the county?
Commissioner, no, I don't believe that there's anything in there on identification of them. I mean, most of what the bill deals with is about, lengths of stay in some of those facilities, not discriminating against people going into them because of certain reasons, and then creating different levels, level 1 through level 4 of the homes that are some of the level of care that they receive within it. But we can follow up with the state attorney's office and the task force on that particular issue to see if there's anything specific within their purview that they can, share with us on that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And the second issue, the impact fees, mobility fees. When we were at Palm Beach County Days, I actually went into with the first committee meeting where this was brought up. And it seems like we need to sort of have a discussion here. We actually have the vice chair of TPA here. Several of us sit on the TPA board. We haven't had a meeting there since this all came out. So I'm looking forward to next week when we meet. But I was wondering, you discussed amendments that we were pushing for that could make this more palatable for us, including the interlocal agreements. If a municipality has to enter into an agreement right now that's not addressed, can you let us know? I mean, we have TPA meeting next week. Could you let us know what we may need to discuss with our fellow board members? I believe there's 15 cities represented on that board, along with 5 of us. So if you could maybe give us a little more information on that before we go next week.
And just another question, jumping off that, jurisdiction. I think there was a question as to what the definition of jurisdiction was.
Yes.
Happy to circle back with you and provide you that information.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yep, you are next, Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And again, thank you, Todd and the team. It's always great to see appropriations requests with dollar signs with amounts greater than 0, especially those appropriations important to my district. I did not see Chickasaw Road expansion. I'm guessing that's not a county priority, that's City of Green Acres priority. But I know we've been pushing to get money for that. And during agenda review, it mentioned that there was some money put on that appropriation.
Yes, Commissioner. Right now, there's $250,000 allocated in the House budget for that particular project, so it is in play for conference.
I appreciate your work on that. We were Tallahassee, Palm Beach County Days pushing for that very hard. Thank you. Central Palm Beach County historic infrastructure improvements. The requested amount was $1 million. There's $500,000 in the House already. If I'm not mistaken, last session was $1 million, the full $1 million requested, approved by the legislature, but then vetoed, unfortunately. Is there a chance that we can see that $1 million, the full $1 million, approved again this year?
Yeah, so, one of the strategies that we always have, I mean, particularly when it comes to appropriations, is one, getting as close to the full amount that you've requested in there initially. But as you go through that conference process, there's opportunities for us to push a little harder to increase some of the specific allocations that we received. I mean, a Peanut Island, for example, we originally had 0 on both sides in that, did an amendment, were able to pull some money from somewhere else to get what we call a placeholder of $350,000. It may end up being that amount, but it gives us an opportunity to then have further conversations between both the House and the Senate to increase that. So we'll try to strategically look at ways that we can increase some of those appropriation allocations that you see.
Thank you for including this on our high list of priorities. It's a big priority for me for my district, Central Palm Beach County. And Central Palm Beach County does include my district, just clarifying. Okay, perfect. The other one I looked at was in my district, of course, Palm Springs, Congress Ave, Sewer Force Main. We talked about this maybe half a year ago. when the legislative agenda was first presented to us. $350,000 as opposed to zero, what we were talking about a few weeks ago. That's a good start, hopefully, compared to the $3 million that was originally being asked for.
Yeah, and Commissioner, just to go back to the Central County infrastructure, the whole reason for the creation of that was really focused on that Palm Springs. Initially, that project brought to light some of the plight of some of the infrastructure of some of the municipalities in the central portion of the county, which were some of the ones that were our older cities that were developed to, over time and have not been able to keep up with some of that reinvestment. So we do think that there's multiple opportunities with the direct allocation with Palm Springs, with the Central County, and then as well as some of the funding that we currently have today that's allocated for that project within the sphere of replacement, ARPA replacement dollars that we've provided for this program.
Is that the $1.5 million matching money from the
Correct.
county you're talking about?
That's correct.
In
Yes.
addition to the $1.5 million that the town of or village of Palm Springs has come up with?
Yes, sir. That's
Is
correct.
that, I don't know as well as you do how the legislative process works, what goes into their minds when they decide to put money down, but they look to see what we contribute. And we've matched $3 million, and they're coming up with a tenth of that, a little over a tenth of that. Okay, like I said, good start. Hopefully we can get that number way up. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. I sent you information regarding their definition of artificial intelligence that they're using. I don't know if you can get to the Senate people. They seem to have better sense on this. But that the definition that they're using, every search engine, most devices, I mean, refrigerators, thermostats, I mean, they've got I appreciate what they're trying to do, but the definition is overbroad in looking sort of backwards, and it's not forward-looking, so they're going to have to be reviewing this again probably in the next session as well. So they might want to put some additional caveats in there based on if they're going to move forward with that addition that. On the mobility impact fee situation, and I know this is probably too early to even broach this, but my understanding is that if they were to move forward in the way they're planning to move forward, there's nothing to preclude us from giving those roads to the cities. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yes, that's accurate.
So they can maintain those roads. Okay, good. All right, and then lastly on the state bird, I'd like to make a suggestion that they do a 3-year study on this before they make this change. They're apparently, they've got, they're going to be doing that on some other items, so.
Commissioner Bernard.
Wow.
Got to follow the state bird.
I can't follow the state bird. Before I ask a couple questions, I do, Grassford Smith was in here. He was, I think he left, but he's the president of the Palm Beach County Bar Association, and he's an attorney for Ackerman, so glad to see him here. And then also, Mr. Richard Rouse is also here, attorney with the Rouse firm. Couple questions on, do we have a status on the opioid settlement and kind of like what's being used for some of the, I saw mental health funding. Are we using any of those funds for mental health funding at all?
I know that Administrator Baker and Assistant County Administrator Reginald Duran have been working on that particular item.
Someone's coming
sorry. Originally Reginald Duran, but now, Tammy.
Switch it over to Tammy.
Sorry.
I'm just a little shorter than he is. We've got some meetings set up in the next couple of weeks to try and finalize more of a plan and bring that back to the Board of County Commissioners for the opioid settlement dollars.
Okay.
We are working with the committee, this board board set up. And so we're taking it through them to get input, and then we'll meet with each of you individually to go through it and then bring it back to the board as a whole.
Are we doing anything on the mental health side?
A lot of it is going to be behavioral health.
Okay.
Yes, along with other things that we're attempting to, and will hopefully partner with the healthcare district so that we can maximize the dollars that we have.
Yeah, that's. I'm hoping that we can really work with the healthcare district, so in that way we can, you know, try to get those dollars as far as possible. And then my other question, not really question, but really in regards to the juvenile detention center that you mentioned, Todd. You know, hopefully we're working with Hillsborough, as you mentioned, and so in that way, as we're seeking funding in 2025 and, you know, in 2026, hopefully we're able to get the funding for Palm Beach County and then to work with Broward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The glitch bill,
Excuse me.
the height restrictions, can you go over that again? And the distance? Because I thought there was something, the original and the amended were different, so.
Yes, so originally, I think you're referring to the miles, is that what you're talking about? Okay, so originally in the legislation that was passed last year, it was a mile radius. When the bill was filed, they tried to shrink that down to a quarter mile. However, when that amendment, which also left industrial in the law, it did change that back, so it is going to be still 1 mile is the radius at which we're looking at.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see no lights on, so may I have a motion to receive and file, please?
So moved.
Yep. So I have a first from Commissioner Woodward, a second from Commissioner Bernard. Thank you. And all in favor? Nobody is opposed. We have 5-0 since we have one off the dais. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll make it 6-0. We got a nod of the head, please. Okay, we are on to regular agenda item 6D1, Housing and Economic Development. Does anyone need a presentation? No. Okay.
Madam Vice Mayor, I make a motion to approve item 6D1.
May I have a second, please? Second from Commissioner Weiss. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next page, regular agenda, Parks and Recreation, item 6E1. Does anyone need a presentation? Nope. Okay. May I have a motion, please, to approve?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 6E1, and this is a cooperation agreement with the Palm Beach pump track.
May I have a second? Second from Commissioner Woodward. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We are on to item 6F1, A, B, and C. This is in reference to Palmtran. I'm not looking like anybody need a presentation? Nope. I think Sarah's hungry. Any discussion? May I have a motion, please?
Thank you.
Second.
Commissioner Baxter, then Commissioner Bernard. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
We are now on to board appointments. So I will start with Commissioner Barnett. Any appointments?
No, Vice Mayor, no appointments.
Commissioner Woodward.
Not at this time.
Commissioner Weiss.
Not at this time.
Commissioner Bernard.
None, Madam Vice Mayor.
Commissioner Baxter.
I'd like to thank staff for all their hard work putting everything together. I waited till the end, but I know it was a lot of information we received today. And I also wanted to have them bring back to us or give direction without objection to bring back to us the DRO project of people getting approvals used to be in public. It was very open, transparent. People used to see it. Now it's very closed behind doors. No one gets to actually see it anymore. So I'd like to take a look at bringing it back into the public eye after receiving some complaints about maybe what goes on. But I think if everyone can see what's going on, we can actually take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we were doing board appointments, so no worries, no worries.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of what you were asking.
DRO process.
The what?
The DRO process.
Isn't,
Development review process. There are certain items that the board delegated to staff to have people come through to pretty much speed up the process. And so we can bring back and outline how that process, this is a new board, so we can bring back what the process is, how it works, and then the board can tell us to bring it back to, some of it back for your discussion.
Sure.
To clarify, not to come to us, the board, for public, I mean what our staff is doing with them, potentially, whether there's a clerk available, whether you want to record it, but I think the public needs to see how it's done and bring it into some transparency for everyone to see. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will now move to staff comments. Administration. No problem.
Just making notes. Just a quick one on board directives. I know we just updated a few. At our last January 23rd meeting, Commissioner Baxter directed staff to confer with the SOE on a timeline for charter amendment to be placed on a ballot. That language, if it's for the August ballot, we would need to submit around May 17th of 2024, and language for the November ballot must be submitted by August 2nd of 2024. Also, Commissioner Bernard, along with a couple of others, Sachs, et cetera, requested that we explore the advantages of moving the county headquarters to Westgate, Belvedere area. Staff did submit something to the board in writing on February 1st, and we'll be discussing that item and looking for your direction at the February 27th workshop. Also, we will be meeting with Commissioner, the Vice Mayor, on the reorg. That meeting has been set up for this Thursday afternoon.
So we have a motion to receive and file, please.
So moved.
Yep. Commissioner Weiss, Commissioner Bernard. All in favor? No, motion carries 6-0. Yep.
I did receive this morning email from Richard Ratcliffe, the Executive Director for the League of Cities. They are requesting a joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners as well as the school district in order to discuss 3 main topics, and Richard Ratcliffe is here. One is transportation, affordable workforce housing, as well as the infrastructure sales tax. And I'm looking for direction from this board on how you want me to proceed.
Commissioner Weiss.
yeah, I have no issue with that, so I would recommend that we go ahead and give direction to move forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. We are now, County Attorney. No? Okay. We're now off to board comments. Why don't we go in district order? Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. On behalf of the Vice Mayor, I'd like to request a approval of an off-site proclamation recognizing March 3rd through 9th, 2024 as National Association of Women in Construction Week.
Oh, any? Okay.
We have a second?
We have a second. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
You're welcome. On behalf of District 2, I'd like to ask for permission for an offsite or make a motion for approval for an offsite proclamation declaring March 3rd through March 9th Flood Awareness Week in Palm Beach County.
May I have a second? Second from Commissioner Woodward. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple other comments. First, I'd like to ask the board for support to direct the county. We received, or we will be receiving, $250,000 in our agreement with the City of West Palm Beach regarding from the Photographic Center being relocated. I know that Commissioner Bernard and I last budget were supportive of trying to get something for the 1909, which is a nonprofit business incubator located in the community, and I'd like to see us take that $250 and use it to support them and help additional businesses get started. So if there's no objection. And then...
Is that direction, or do we need a vote on that?
Well, they have to bring it back.
Okay.
You're directing us to work with them and bring back a contract for your consideration.
Thank you.
All right. Also, I'd like to ask to schedule a workshop to talk about modernizing county operations using technology without objection. And then also would like to ask staff or direct staff to move forward. We approved a contract for the Darpster Foundation for spay and neuter services on December 19th. That was being held in abeyance for some research to be done. I believe that research has been concluded, and we need to move forward and have that contract be implemented now. Any objection? No? All right. And then lastly, I'd like to have staff look into, we donated land to the Boys and Girls Club up on Drexel a number of years ago prior to any of us being on this board. A number that they built on a portion of that property, but there's a large portion of the property that has never been utilized, never been built on. It now is used as a dump. It has become a place where you have ATVs riding on it, and it's right adjacent to a neighborhood. So I received countless complaints over the years about it, and I'd like to have the county look into seeing about if we can get affordable and workforce housing built on that property. And with that, that's all I have.
Excuse me, I'm not objecting, but I have a question. So would we be selling that property then?
No.
Or are we going to donate it?
We donated that
But now we would be taking it back?
Look to either get it back or have them work with a nonprofit and get some housing put over there, because do something with it, because right now it's been sitting fallow for probably 15 years, and so it would be a great place.
I guess what I'd like to see is what that cost analysis is of that property, if we are going to just donate it to somebody, and what its value is today.
We are required by ordinance to always get appraisals on our property and make a determination, and it needs a supermajority vote to dispose of any of our property.
So just for clarification, we donated the land, or we did a lease agreement with them on the land?
We donated it.
We donated it.
So in essence, we do not own this property?
Nope.
So what is the ramification for the county?
I want to say, was there a reverter clause in there? I want to say it was a reverter clause, but it's been a minute, so I need to verify that.
That's okay. Well, clarification is good.
Good morning. It's Mia Jala, Assistant County Administrator and FDO Director. This is a property that was donated to the Boys and Girls Club many, many years ago to be used for purposes typical of Boys and Girls Clubs, right? So kids, community center and the like. It is not a county-owned property. So for this to move forward, and we will come back with a staff report, some level of negotiation will need to happen with the Boys and Girls Club because it's not our property. So there will be a need for them to be willing to let go of the property and then carve out a portion that they're not using.
Thank you. Commissioner Baxter.
I guess then I have an objection because I don't think we are in a place with our budget and where we're at to start buying property back. I mean, if we were getting it back if it was reverting to us without any cost, I'd be fine with that. But buying it back, I'm not in favor of.
So can I ask you a question? Do you have any objection to having them bring a report back to us on this?
No objection.
Thank you.
I think direction is clear. Thank you. Anything else?
No, I just want to thank everybody for allowing me to be on this earth while we revolved around the sun for one full circle.
Happy birthday.
That's how we say happy birthday.
Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and happy birthday, Greg.
You're welcome.
I'm enjoying this cool weather we've had lately, and I don't mean the weather outside, I mean it in here. I feel like my finger's about to fall off, but I'm not complaining. I know it's going to be warm very soon, and I'll be missing this cold weather. This past weekend, we had a really nice event in my district at the American German Club called the Great American Kosher Barbecue and Jewish Festival. It was a very nice crowd despite the rain, which cleared up later in the afternoon. The brisket was on point. Had I known about it sooner, I would have let you all know, but it was their first annual, and they'll be back next year. Had a great time. I also had the honor on Sunday to attend with Commissioner Bernard and Administrator Baker the bus reveal for our Executive Director, Clinton Forbes, Palm Trend Executive Director. There was a beautiful bus wrapped in his image. It was a nice remembrance of his life and leadership to our county. Had many members of his family there. It was a great experience to honor him in their presence. And not just his personal family, but his Palm Beach County Palm Trend family as well. I wanted to speak briefly on the issue of commercial vehicles. And it's an issue that we're still facing. Well, I know the County Commission acted on this issue with this previous vote. I think it's important that we continue to find solutions for those truck operators who depend on the way of life to support their families. I do support the trucking industry, and we can't move our product around our country or our county without the men and women who leave their families to provide this vital service. That's why, in addition to the work that county staff and administrators have already been doing, I would like, if there's no objection from the board, to direct staff to continue to seek alternative solutions as to finding property, suitable county-owned properties or maybe other locations where these trucks could be housed in the area, not on residences, but in lots that won't put individuals at personal public safety risk, won't damage the roads in the Indian Trails Improvement District, but will also allow these truck operators to continue operating in Palm Beach County, to continue their livelihood. I think it's very important. We want our truckers to remain in Palm Beach County. I'm willing to work with you to find solutions to this important problem. I also, again, want to thank our legislative team, Todd and Casey, Ed Chase, for all of your efforts in Tallahassee and Washington, and for, again, prioritizing the Hispanic Cultural Resource Community Center for funding, especially in the federal legislative agenda for my district, District 3, and all Hispanic people and all people who will be able to enjoy this resource center when it's built. This coming week, we'll be hosting another strategic planning meeting for the Resource Center. We've had many great ideas come out of our last roundtable discussion. I want to recognize, in particular, the Florida Hispanic American Chamber of Commerce and their president, Juan Pagan, for coming to me way back when I was first appointed at the Fiesta de Pueblo celebration at the San Frere Park in Green Acres. And they've been hosting this Fiesta de Pueblo and Business Expo for a celebration of Three Kings Day, the Three Wise Men, in Green Acres for 12 years, recognizing the Hispanic cultures represented in Palm Beach County through food, music, art, and commerce. I want to thank all the people who are working so diligently for the Hispanic Cultural Community Resource Center, including Administrator Baker and Dr. Izame Ayala and Todd Bonlaren, our district and the people I represent. We are very grateful, and so am I. I hope you all have a very happy rest of your week and enjoy the Super Bowl. I hope they both lose and go Dolphins.
Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, and I agree, go Dolphins. Also, I do support the flamingo as the state bird. We don't need a 3-year study on that. We can do it right now. I would like to update the board. We did have our meeting last week with Highland Beach from Alani Park. I'd like to thank, and there's a lot of people in the room right now that attended that with me. Thank you all. It was an interesting night. I'm still decompressing a little bit. I think most of you have already moved on. But a couple of facts I think everyone here needs to know. Voters voted in 1986 on a Parks and Rec bond. Part of that bond money was for this particular property. We used the money, we bought the land, and we've owned it since 1987. So we've all inherited this. I think everyone in this room was maybe not a part of that process, but here we are. And the contract is clear. It is to be a park. And that is what we're moving forward with. We're very much looking forward to working with the community. Those who are willing to work with us are very welcome to contact my office. We had a lot of great feedback, and I think once we got over the stickers of no county park, we got to some good conversations, and we've had a lot of good feedback since then. So we're looking forward to working with members of the community in the next few months. I know Isami already her brain was working that night on next steps on how we move forward with this, so I appreciate it. I had 2 of our assistant administrators with me that night. I thank both of you and everyone who was a part of that meeting. Highland kind of disappeared on us and left us to the fun by ourselves. But I think we handled it pretty well, and I wanted to thank everyone for that and let the community know that this park doesn't just belong to Highland Beach. It belongs to all the people of Palm Beach County, and we're looking forward to working as partners with them and creating something that we all can enjoy. So I'd just like to thank the board. I don't know when this comes back to all of us, but we're working with them. And happy birthday to Greg. Thank you. Or Commissioner Wise.
Thank you. Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would like to, I have a few things, but I'd like to first request an off-site approval for a proclamation recognizing February 27th, 2024 as Flight Center Palm Beach County Day.
Second. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
What would, I have a question actually that came up for Administrator Baker. What would, or even Isami, what would be a realistic time frame for the county to create a space and develop it for the truckers to park on?
It depends. We have already started to look. Commissioner Weiss spoke with me earlier about do we have space on county property? We've got that information. So we're going to be, I've already asked to speak with him about it, and then we'll bring it back. One of the areas that we look at would be what's close to the highways, et cetera. However, none of our parking was developed to handle this load per se. So we're looking at a number of options. We're also working with our zoning people, and it may be a comp plan, not sure, but it is something that we could initiate where we can allow within industrial parks parking for truckers, and we could carry that particular initiative through fruition if that's what the board wanted to do. But those are some of the things that we're looking at right now in order to try to move this faster. I can tell you what we can aim at as a goal, but I cannot sit here and tell you exactly when that would be done because we still have some more research to do.
So are we saying this could be done by February 22nd?
No.
And then what happens to the truckers if we don't allow a grandfathering version by February 22nd for them to be in there? So do they get fined daily?
This board has given us some direction. We normally fine people if we get a complaint. We come out, we do a notice of violation, we give them time to cure. We don't immediately start fining them.
Is there any timeline with prior to a year, 2 years, 3 years? What's a realistic timeline was the original, I guess, question for us to find a space, because we keep talking about finding them space.
So I think part of the discussion, not talking about a specific piece of property, but certainly to give you a comprehensive look where these uses are allowed in zoning and land use and the number of acres, we will have that information for you in February. Where it's permitted, right, we can have that information. Just the land uses in the zonings where the use is permitted and is available. We can put that together, specific properties, how it would apply, and then development of it. As the administrator said, that development is a lot more difficult to try and ascertain.
Well, forgive me, but you did provide us a map of where it's currently allowed. So what new would you be presenting?
I don't know, and I'd have to go refresh my memory and look at that map if it included all of the zoning and the land use and the specifications that applied to it. If we've got that information, we'll just reboot it for you so you have that available. And then if you had any other direction to broaden it, for instance, the designation you saw last week in the Ag Reserve, the commercial, I'm drawing a blank on our designation, it was the industrial designation, that allowed for commercial parking. So we have a number of them where the board has expanded that availability and could talk more.
We can bring you an update at our next board meeting, just to tell you where we are. Including those that are allowed today, identifying those properties, along with any other options that we would bring back to the board.
So at our next board meeting, this information you'll have for us?
We'll give you an update. We'll give you an update.
No, just everything. Properties that we could potentially vote on for them to go to?
No,
are we talking about, like, what are we talking, because we keep talking about helping them, but I haven't actually heard any real solutions.
I think what we can have for you in February, the zoning and the land use, identifying for you clearly what opportunities are out there for property owners, be it us or private property owners, to take advantage of this. Also, for some of these new designations, when you see them coming forward, they have those opportunities as well. And the board could always consider including them in part of their approvals. But we can give you the broad piece. Specific properties, a lot of that might be dependent on private property owners too, should they wish to take advantage of those and seek approvals.
And if we go forward, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, so then if we don't currently have county property that this is allowed close to or already in existence, then what you're saying is that we would then have to buy property for them to park on?
Wouldn't go to that point. I would say just trying to identify as you see properties coming forward for you on Thursdays at zoning meetings, to have an understanding of some of those categories, some of those approvals do allow for commercial parking and property, and the applicants may or may not be taking advantage of that. So you have that broad idea of how many zoning categories and land use categories allow for this use already.
And forgive me, but if I'm reading between the lines, you're saying that we should force this on the builders that are constructing places?
Not at all. If they find it to be a use to add onto their property, I'm not so sure how many of them fully realize that, and certainly are good questions that could be prompted at, certainly through staff review and other meetings, but making them available and letting the board know as well that these opportunities exist now.
I do know that the state of Florida is looking into this issue because it's not just a Palm Beach County issue, it is a statewide issue. And they are looking at potential spaces to create these parking opportunities. So we'll bring back and give you an update at the zoning meeting. And then we can also continue to look at and provide you an update on county properties, et cetera. A lot of our county properties, let's say Vista, for example, with the very large parking lot, it is in a residential, it's adjacent to residential. So we need to look at all of it. Plus our property is PO, public owned property. It is not private. So those are things that we need to work through, and then we'll be bringing that back. We've already begun the process.
And just to pipe in here, I've been talked to Jared Perdue and also Steve Braun about this. As a matter of fact, Steve contacted me this morning just about where they're looking specifically in Palm Beach County. But I would like to have Ed and Casey take up the fight. I think this is important. FDOT, obviously, there's studies, and I think I've given everybody all that paperwork. There are plenty of studies of the need here. I would just like to say that county property, if we have county property that can be disposed of, then we can do a public-private partnership with someone who builds and maintains. I would be in favor of that. I would not be in favor of the county building a parcel, building this, because that starts to, hold on a second, Commissioner Baxter, that starts to go into giving an advantage to one group over another group. A public-private partnership, the same as we wanted to do with the ATV park, is what I would be in favor of. And also, I think this discussion, while it's valid here today, it should also be part of what we do when we have the public here, when we have this discussion. Commissioner Baxter.
As I appreciate not spending taxpayer dollars, that the answer to this was allowing them to stay on their own property. So I keep hearing everyone say, oh, we need to help them, we need to find them space, but then we don't want to spend any money to do that. So it's like saying, okay, this is your problem, have a nice day. It's the landscapers all over again. Sorry for your luck, you've been there for decades, but you can no longer stay. This is a terrible situation. This is a terrible place to put our residents and hardworking people who need to feed their family. This is absolutely terrible. It breaks my heart that we've even reached this point, and I know we are all hungry, so I'm going to stop and leave it at that and just say, I think we have some serious thinking to do, and I hope everyone has a great lunch.
Commissioner Woodward, your light is on.
Thank you. And as I understand it, when this comes back to us in February, that's our opportunity. When we make a policy change, we have the ability to give 6 months extension on whatever happens. That's a discussion that we get to have. I do not support us running a commercial parking. I don't support us paying for it. I don't support us operating this. Public-private partnership would be the way to go. And I look forward to having this discussion. But again, there are a number of small businesses in this county that have to operate in certain ways all throughout the county. And I don't think that this is necessarily a unique issue for them. Every business has expenses. And I think we need to be careful on moving forward here and using taxpayer funds or taxpayer land on how this is done. And it shouldn't be on us to run it. So that's what I feel.
Thank you. And I would ask that the folks that submitted in November for a truck parking on Southern Boulevard, that we reach out to them and see what we can do to expedite that process, because I know it was over 170 spaces right on Southern Boulevard near the Turnpike. And that is one of the tools in our toolbox is offering expedited permitting. So I would appreciate that, because yes, we don't want to just say no, we want to have solutions. With that, let's see. I'd also like to, in the future, talk about maybe, as we're talking about reorganization of our departments, I would like to actually talk about maybe renaming code enforcement to code compliance, because that's what they're supposed to be doing. That's what our goal is compliance. So and it sounds more of a partnership than an authoritarian position. So I would like to see if that is doable. And I don't think that takes an act of God. I would like to thank all of our firefighters from around the county who participated. Oh my gosh, Commissioner Barnard, I'm sorry. Go ahead, and then I'll finish.
No, thank you very much, Madam Vice Mayor. I'd like to, Commissioner Barnett will attend this event with me tomorrow. I'd like to declare February 7th, 2024 as National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day.
All in favor? Thank you very much. Motion carries 6-0. The second was Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you. Several things. I can bring this up now. Commissioner Woodward, you had mentioned the park and the town hall, and I went back to, when you had brought it up last week, I went back to look at some of the articles, since I was here when we voted on it. I think the 5-year clock is ticking. I'm trying to see, what are we doing in regards to, because I think there's a 5-year option and then there's a second 5-year option. Have we decided what staff is bringing to us in the future?
We are beginning to move forward, working with Commissioner Woodward on meeting with the community to get input, and that's part of our program for Milani Park. It has not significantly changed. It is to provide for parking so that we would have public access to the beachfront.
And if I could, what we voted on, our options last time were one final 5-year extension to kick it down the road until 2026 or 7, or we
No,
could go ahead.
2025. I think it's, is that?
No.
May I? Good morning again. We had the opportunity to do one additional extension. However, in July of 2023, a letter was sent to the town notifying them that we were going to proceed forward with the sign of the park. The meeting that took place last week is precisely that first step to engage with the community, obtain their feedback as to what they would like to see in the development of this project, and then hopefully continue to engage with the town as well to bring it forward. We have additional steps that need to be taken, as you can imagine, for the design of any county project. In this one in particular, it includes archaeological studies as well as environmental studies that will need to be developed. But our first step was to touch base with the community and gather their input.
If I'm correct, do we have site plan approval?
We do.
Okay, so we do have site plan approval. So we have to redesign it, or I'm trying to...
We have a site plan approved with 43 conditions of approval. It's a site plan that is quite intense, I will argue. The community has very vocally expressed that they would like a different approach. County staff will recommend to I'm going to call it tone it down, right, to pursue a passive approach to the park rather than the currently approved site plan. And that's why we went back to the community to seek their input and identify if they will be in agreement with a modified approach. If we're able to find that balance, then we will return to the town to modify that site plan.
Okay, so if we have to redesign it, do we have to get new site plan approval from the town?
If there were going to be changes, yes, we will need to go back through the permitting process with the town.
But if I'm correct, we had said, like, when we had voted, it was like a 5-year period. And so we haven't really done anything in 5 years, or?
We were under an extension of 5 years before moving forward with design and pursuing project implementation, which is the notification that was sent last July to the town, notifying them under the conditions of approval that we were moving forward.
This is, I'm
sorry.
Yeah.
If I may, I had to dig in deep on this one. The town and the people are very much against the plan as approved by the town of Highland Beach. The 43 conditions of approval that they've put, including 120 parking spaces, we are looking to scale it down to 40, which honestly, according to our last meeting, is still too much for the people. So the problem that we are up against is the town commission put together the site plan with the 43 conditions of approval. The people of the town are very much against that plan. So we have had to kick this since 2009, I believe, is when that site plan was put together.
Correct.
the people do not want it in that way. Honestly, we don't want to build it in that way. It's a two-phase project. We can do this in a single phase, a very scaled-back version that the people who are now listening to it are open to. They like it. It's a much more appropriate use of the property, and it's a much more, affordable use for us as a county to actually have this park. So the problem that we're up against right now is getting what the people want, what we want, and getting the town of Highland Beach, the commission, on board with to allow us to scale back a much smaller version and actually build this at an affordable rate and its appropriate use of the property.
And Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, since we had voted for the 5-year option, do we need to come back and vote on something else?
Not at this time.
Okay, so when the 5 years are up, what happens?
We have notified the town as of today that we're commencing the sign, right? So that clock was put on hold. We're moving forward with the project, and the steps that we're taking are precisely to implement the project.
And then since we have to go through the site plan with the city, with the town, what happens if they don't support or approve the new site plan?
We do have a site plan that is approved that includes the more intense development.
Okay, so we can build it as is right now?
We have an approved plan, that is correct.
And do we have a time period where the site plan will pretty much elapse?
I don't have an answer to that question. We'll need to research it.
Okay, because I'd like to know, like, if we have a site plan that's approved that we can build as is, then let's go forward. But if we're under a time clock and it ends, then we have to start all over. Because I believe once we approved the site plan that was approved, we had agreed to not build anything, I believe, for 10 years.
I will circle back with an answer to your question. I don't have the answer to that question right now.
Commissioner Bernard, before you go on, Commissioner Baxter, you have your light on?
Just a question, because this has been very contentious. How many people spoke in favor of the park?
We had, and I'm relying on my memory here, we had one neighbor that spoke in favor. We did receive some cards towards the end that expressed they were in favor but didn't want to speak during the meeting, and then the rest of the speakers were in opposition or with concerns as to the proposed development.
And how many people went to the meeting?
It was a full room. My estimate, this is not a hard count, will be that we had around 150 in attendance, but that is just an estimate. I cannot provide you a number with certainty.
What happens if we were to never build the park? I'm just curious process. Then what happens?
That's a question that will need to be explored, and I will appreciate the opportunity to circle back with county attorney. When the property was purchased, it was purchased for development of a county park, okay?
And somebody had mentioned something about the bond or something regarding, and we couldn't, I guess even if the people wanted it back that donated it, how would that process work?
The property was acquired with county bonds under parks, and the purchase and sale agreement certainly has a right of first refusal in place. So if you allow me the opportunity, I will reconvene with county attorney, and we will circle back and provide you an answer to the question.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, this property was purchased. It was not donated, correct?
It was purchased.
Okay, and they have the right of first refusal.
There is a right of first refusal in the purchase agreement.
And I guess the question would be the purchase price. If it was deemed excess land and could be sold, the value of that land would be the current appraised value?
Based on a direct reading of the purchase and sale agreement, I believe so. But again, I will appreciate the opportunity to reconvene with county attorney.
And does that land have an underlying land use other than a park?
We'll need to return with an answer. I don't have that answer right now.
I think you might get a couple more answers from our commissioners. So I would, commissioners, if you have further questions, please forward them to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam
This li-
Vice
I'm
Mayor,
sorry.
in regards to this item, just want to make sure, as you're working with the district commissioner, I'd love for us to get some more information in regards to kind of like what are options, so in that way we can make a decision, because this was very contentious in 2019 when we voted to give the 5-year extension, and it was a 4-3 decision to give the 5-year extension. So,
Thank you.
This land is also included as part of our level of service for our beach park. And if we don't move forward with it, then we'll be lowering our level of service with access to the beach for the public.
well, it was supposed to be access in 1987.
I agree with you. Again, it's
Yeah,
projected out, build
level of
out
service?
for level of service.
Okay.
I do have a couple more
Sure, go
comments.
right ahead.
Last Saturday, I had the chance to attend a Black History Month event in Delray Beach, and the KOP Mentoring Network, led by Mrs. C. Ron Allen and Ms. Vera Woodson. They had the second annual Evening of Black Excellence Under the Stars that recognized 6 residents in Delray Beach, and so I was able to present certificate of recognition to Mr. John Edward Oxidine, William Bill Murray, former City Commissioner David Randolph in Delray, Cliff Durden, and Reverend Marcia Bean, and Janice Jackson Hill. So it was great to be at that event. In regards to Black History Month, there are many events that are taking place, and we always want to ask our residents to continue to visit our library system, because they continue to have programs for our residents and also community services. I am also requesting for this board to send a letter of support to the Florida Museum of Black History Task Force in order for the task force to consider Palm Beach County as a location for the Florida Museum of Black History. I want to thank the Legislative Affairs Department with Todd Von Laren and his team, and Ms. Baker for working on a draft letter. So.
That's it? Thank you. I will just also say, again, sorry, Mac, I cut you off, didn't mean to do that. Saturday, I had the opportunity to do something really glamorous and be a judge in a chili cook-off. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because it was the people that were doing the chili were most of our firefighters from around the county, the different organizations, past, present. One group was the wife of a fallen officer. So it was a pleasure to do. We had a lot of our fire rescue folks were there. Nice to see them there. And I do want to wish those going to NACO good luck. Bring home some dollars. I will not be joining you, but we will see you all next week at Solid Waste Authority, who is back in town. And we will adjourn at this moment, but we will be back here, Matters by the Public, at 2 o'clock. Thank you all. And when we come back, can we have it a little warmer in here?